Hello, this is Chala Dincoy, the repositioning expert. I am the CEO and founder of that company, plus this little podcast, the sleeper hit, I'm hoping, of the season. It is called Naked Marketing, where we talk about marketing mistakes. It's naked because we are honest, and we have Kelly at Solvv. Oh, I love how you put Solvv right there in your personal name. Kelly Max here. I have had the pleasure of meeting Kelly. How long has it been? I'm going to say about 3 weeks ago we met.
Yeah.
And we've connected, and it's like brother and sister from another mother kind of vibe. It's great. We've connected over and over, and we're going to do lots of things together. So welcome, Kelly, after that really long introduction.
Thank you, Chala. I appreciate it, and thank you for having me here.
I'm thrilled. So you are some sort of child prodigy. In fact, I met a real child prodigy yesterday, so I'm kind of like making fun here, but because she was much younger. But child prodigy Kelly, tell us all about who you help and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a serial entrepreneur. Today is a really exciting day. I just launched a new SaaS platform with my co-founders, which is called Prio. We help teams and businesses to create absolute clarity amongst any initiative based on a methodology that we love. It's a great platform. I love the methodology. It's really a passion project. It started with a passion project. But really my main focus at the moment is Solvv. It's a social media platform that helps people solve problems in 15-minute audio-only brainstorming sessions, almost like micro podcasts. It basically helps you cut through the clutter and the chaos and messiness of Clubhouse, and gives a very, very big focus point on each individual challenge or problem. It's in the making. We're going to release to market probably late 2021. But we have an early community, and it's very exciting.
So talk about the Solvv piece of it. Is Solvv the micro podcast piece, or is it the umbrella brand of Prio and the micro podcast?
Yeah, it's both. So Solvv is a company, it's the platform, but it's also an entity. So a Solvv is a 15-minute session. And so when you host a Solvv, or when you're joining a Solvv as a panelist, your focus is on solving a specific problem that somebody brings to the table. And that's why we love this brand, because it has a lot of meaning, right? It speaks a lot of clarity to what the purpose of this investment is that people bring to the table.
So I love that you said that this is why I called you the child prodigy, is you said you were like born, what did you call yourself? A serial entrepreneur. So talk about that journey.
You know, for me, Chala, it was, I did gymnasium, which is like high school in Germany. I grew up in Germany, and I was really good in getting through it and still having a lot of freedom. So I learned to cheat a lot, and that actually helped me learn better because I understood the principles that had to go on the cheat sheet. And that's basically what learning is about, right? Understanding the principles of something and at the core, and then applying those. And as much as I look back, I feel it helped me to become a good self-learner. And so when I went from high school, I had to debate which college I would go to and what to study. And it didn't feel right. It didn't sit right with me to go into a theoretic environment and be stuck there for 7 years. So I found a company, and I joined it very early on. And 2 weeks in, I told the CEO I want his job. And basically that was my way of marketing myself to him and saying, hey, I'm willing to learn. Like I'm going to become CEO of this company. 7 years later, I was speaker of the board, CEO. We scaled to $200 million. It was my diploma. And so from then on out, basically life was my journey. Life was my college. I'm not shy of anything new because I understand, if you understand the core principles of something and you apply them, your learning curve it's more painful at the beginning, but it's exponential, right? Because you immediately have a practical application that you can measure against. And that worked really well for me.
That's amazing. And what industry was that in, your first job?
It was staffing and recruiting. So we basically staffed big projects for IBM, Siemens, SAP with IT experts and interim managers. And then later it led also into permanent placement, like headhunting and also engineering. like actual engineering. This is
Wow.
beyond software.
I mean, if there's an industry that's in pain, in my opinion,
Oh,
for differentiation and marketing, that's them. They were always like,
oh, for sure.
always glaze over when you tell them you're in staffing. And
Oh, and
that's,
it's a hustle business, right?
and I mean, and it's hard to get into a new client, a new one, because they already have one. There's just nothing.
Yes.
But of course, I mean, my clients hire me, and one of my newest, biggest clients is a staffing company. So that's
Mm.
why it's so fresh for me when you tell me you're from that industry. Is we're doing a lot of interesting work to differentiate them.
And it's really hard. I think it's a lot of, I mean, for us then it was rough. Like, I mean, we did cold calling every day. We had very clear metric, and it was 200 calls a day lead to that many people who pick up, or 200 attempts lead to that many people who pick up. From those, you might get one request to fill a position, and then you have to fill it within the hour because others have that already too. And so, because companies want to spread it, right? They want to eliminate the risk. And so it was intense. It was good. I was young. I was able to do that. And but even then, it was interesting for me. I am like, why do I invest 200 calls? I'm just gonna create better relationships with these people. And I invested on very little clients, but invested in them 10x, and that worked for me. And I outbet everybody in the company, and that's how I was able to keep leading, even though I basically managed people from college, which as a 21, 22-year-old, and they just came from their business bachelor degree or whatever, I had to outperform them. Otherwise, they wouldn't listen to me. But the same principle applied.
But that's great. These are some great learnings for entrepreneurs. Now, let's get to the naked part. You've had businesses, you've been doing this since you were born. So what was the big mistake, the marketing mistake that you learned from?
It was a very, very interesting question to me, and I'm a very reflective person, but I've never really thought about that specific one. I think a lot, Prio is, for example, the Prio platform asks you what could make this fail, right? Because it tries to eliminate the risks and the failures up front. And so it's a very interesting way to look at it. And when you asked me, really what came to mind was a company after that I had before Prio and Solvv, that I was running, which is a talent management and recruiting technology business, a SaaS business. We competed with SuccessFactors, Workday, Taleo, like the known ones. And, there was a phase where we wanted to create the new people platform. We called it People OS. And it was basically all around new performance management, feedback systems, complete new organizational designs based on agile swarm organizations. And it sounded awesome, right? People OS sounds great. And really, what I realized looking back, it never took off the way that we intended it to take off. And there's many reasons. It's not just the marketing aspect of it, but it is, my learning there is there's two things. One is the outside view. Like when I always, as a leader, I'm also marketing towards or communicating to my internal staff, and I had 200 people right under me, and I took over product, and I basically tried to turn it around. And the other one was the outside perspective, and we tried to gain more clients, like large clients like Daimler and Nike, and beyond them. And we really were so much in love with ourselves and the idea to be the new kid on the block that does everything great, that we chewed up too much that we could bite. We didn't really go down the MVP route. We basically created an ecosystem of all the modules at once. The marketing materials were fantastic because for me, that representing our vision was huge, but we could never fulfill the expectation that we set in the market. And so when we looked at the data, or basically we didn't look very well at the data, we were so focused on making the assets, the materials, the website so fancy that we didn't realize that we over communicated, and we basically created such a huge expectation in the market that in our post delivery or not in our post engagement in the delivery process, we were not able to fulfill fill those, right? Because we sparked a lot of questions and we thought it looked so cool. But if you don't have everything behind that can fulfill that, my big learning was to say, well, why would have we not done a smaller approach, reduce the budget, reduce the expectations, and really listen to what the market wants, what the market needs, and also how we can go into an iterative cycle to optimize our messaging step by step. So it was basically go out full on, not having the right budget in place, not having the right structures in place, and that basically created a very unhealthy imbalance. That was one.
So there's a few things that I'm hearing there. One was that the product didn't match the expectations set by the marketing. The second was it so reminds me of the Fire Festival. Did you watch the?
Yeah.
Isn't it funny?
Yeah.
So that's one. But the other thing that I'm hearing is that you didn't listen to what the market wanted. So that's a whole messaging issue, I think. Meaning, is it you didn't listen to what the market wanted, and therefore you didn't build that into the program, or you didn't build that into the message?
Like, it's a good question, right?
It's a product issue, or it is a message issue?
Well, I think it was both to a certain extent. I think the product, because we developed it with big clients together in a co-creation program, was very heavy leaning towards their organizational setup. And so the messaging that was basically a SaaS platform accessible for everybody, but the product was very leaning towards one very big client that we had, which is a very typical mistake, right? The big client pays the dollars, makes the product requests, and then suddenly it becomes this isolated solution that doesn't fit the elements that the majority of the market needs. And that just, it was not fire. Like it was, I wouldn't compare it to Fire Fest, but it was not that bad. People didn't show up and didn't have anywhere to live and to eat and just got a sandwich with half peanut butter on it. But it was really the when you look at these two, the aspect of where the disconnect was, it was really the reality of where the product and we were as a company, and the reality of what we communicated in our messaging were just not in line. We stretched too much. I'm a believer that it's always okay to communicate 10% more if you know what you're doing, right? Because it can be a big motivator for your staff. It can be a big driver for energy. And if you understand how much time you need to fill up, right? Big organizations are slow. So once you start selling, until you get there, then you'll have it. But if you go 100% or 50 or 80% over to what you have, it just creates a very negative impact on culture. You have a lot of failures, right? So it's this ripple effect of negativity that goes into the entire organization and ultimately later into the client, and then top and bottom line, right? So it's kind of both.
So because this is going to go into a marketing message mistake summit, or just marketing mistake summit, and the message. So the issue here, would you classify it as marketing message overpromised?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think marketing message overpromised, and I think, like, what I said about like blinded by self-love, right? It was more about how we look rather what we do. And it was like more about how, like, sell before build was a big piece of the company, right? When I started, it was like, you got to sell before you build, because you need to know if the market wants it. But if you do multi-million-dollar deals and you sell before build, you are never able to catch up, right? So it was a very sales-focused organization, and you cannot sell a $40 million contract and have a sell before build mindset. It just doesn't work.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely on side of imperfect action, but if you look at companies like, David and I were talking about this morning, David Hensel. If you look at the difference between entrepreneurs and big, heavy companies, like I used to work for Pizza Hut, Frito-Lay, Pepsi, the difference between how they launch is that entrepreneurs are throwing spaghetti at the wall and selling before building. And what, big companies like mine, yes, they move slower, but they research the crap out of the concept before they hit go, because there's too much at stake. There's, shareholders, there's, all their other products on the same shelf that could be jeopardized in terms of cannibalization. Like there's just too much at play, and they're too strategic to allow for that to happen, which is where I learned how to launch or how to position companies, because we test the positioning, we test it. And, obviously we don't have thousands of dollars and, to test it as a small business, but that's what I help companies do, is to help them figure it out within 2 to 4 weeks by at least doing the dirty work of talking to the key decision makers that have the pulse on the market, and then telling them or getting them to tell us show us the dirty underbelly of that industry or whatever the problem is that we solve. So that is an excellent, I love it. I love it that you I mean, I don't love that it happened to you, but I love the lesson and that you've learned it.
I love that it happened, because look, I mean, we're sorry. I just want to say that, when you say spaghetti and versus testing, I think that's the struggle that big organizations have, right? Is like, how can we be startup-like? That's what we were trying to do. We wanted to try to help them to break from a tanker into speedboats, right? And it's really hard. And then you do a rebrand, but then you don't leverage the core brand because they have their influence. It's not easy. And with Solvv, for example, I took a completely different route after I made another mistake, but that's not so much a marketing mistake. It was a product mistake. I built an app and then I pivoted, but it was a good decision. But basically the first product that we built on Solvv was all like basically pieces of different technologies trying to get in a very lean way to see like the spaghetti, right? Like what of these things work? And I think it's a challenge that people need to solve. And the good thing is, as a startup, you have the freedom to do so, right? You can mess up, you can fuck up. Sorry, but for my English, but it's like, but that's kind of the mentality, right? You should actually to learn, and in a big organization, you're not allowed to, right? And so
exactly. And you hit on like the dichotomy of being, and that was the frustration always, is that, when you're a creative, smart person working for such behemoths, and the ship, like a ship as big as the Titanic, it takes so long to turn, right? It takes like hours and days. Once you turn the wheel, it takes like a month to change direction. So from that to this, seat of the pants, oh my God, everything's always on fire. There's got to be a better like midway. And that's what I teach. That I really do see what I teach is I've learned all the stuff from the slow guys, and I'm trying to slow down the too fast guys so that I can help them. Or in some cases, most of my clients are old, right? I mean, I hope they're not watching this, but they're as old as me. They're older than you, but they have already built very successful businesses. But what they've never done is that they're just going on referrals all the time. They're just going on referrals. They no longer know how to go out and get new clients. And if something's happened in the market, or they've lost a couple of $1 million clients, now they're looking at some sort of way, and they look at social media and they're like, top level CEO decision makers are not, trolling on LinkedIn. They're not. We can't even reach them, and we try the program. But there's a whole way of reaching them that they're not even really aware of, because in their world it was like cold calling. See, David and I are talking about this. Your age doesn't even do this. They don't even know what this is. Or
I do. I learned in the insurance business. I literally opened up, like that was a quick step between high school where I made some money, and I was for selling health insurance. And I literally had a coach, and he said, here's your phone book, start at A. And I literally had to go from A all the way down. I mean, I know what cold calling is, but also I skipped the college time. So I have 7 years more experience. So I'm a little, I started
Yeah.
earlier. If I would have gone to college, probably this would not be the case
No,
anymore.
because even the phones don't look like this.
Yeah,
Kelly,
totally.
phones look like this. They look
I
like
know. I know. I'm not that young though. I remember we had dial phones in our homes, and we were the fancy home because we had a big house and we had 7. And so we could move calls from one room to the other, right? And my friends only had one phone. So everybody always had to talk, in the same spot. So
this is so fun. Okay, so tell us, one piece of advice that you want to leave our listeners and viewers with.
Yeah. It's my absolute favorite saying. I think I took it from Tony Robbins. If you ask my friends in my network, what's Kelly's favorite saying and mantra, it's where focus goes, energy flows. And I can apply this to everything, to my make and mistake, right? The focus was on looking good. The focus was on on the marketing. It was not on the alignment of both, right? It was not on the delivery. So the energy went there. And that took as a leader, right? It takes the entire organization there. It's the same today, right? So that's why I love Solvv so much, because they are very focused. The focus is on that one specific question that panel is addressing, and not a random discussion about many things. And so where focus goes, energy flows applies to everything in life for me. It's one of my favorite. I have a couple others, but it's definitely one of my absolute favorite ones. It guided me since I found it in a very, very good way. And it helps me break through any challenge that I have throughout the day. I take some moments, some time, like, okay, where's my focus? Why am I focusing on this? Do I need to adjust this? And the moment I do this, my entire body relaxes, and I'm aligned again with my end goal and why I do certain things throughout the day, or in general, in business or in life.
That's wonderful, Kelly. Well, thanks for being a guest. How can people reach you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn under Kelly Max. You can also sign up as a founding member at solvv.com. SOLVV stands for Solving Voices. And that's probably the easiest way. And that's the best way to connect with me.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Chala. It was nice.
Take care.